Welcome to Wrestling News Tonight. Well, as of Friday, July 24th, 2026, we have yet another TNA wrestler has just been released by the company. So now we're up to 18 TNA wrestlers that have been released from this company since the beginning of this year. So let's look at who was the latest person who was released, as long as we'll take a look back at all those other wrestlers that have been released and what they're doing right now. So, all right, as of Friday, July 24th, 2026, TNA officially announced that now Victoria Crawford, formerly known as Alicia Fox in WWE, has been released from the company. Now, that's not really a surprise, being her cohort, Tessa Blanchard, you might have remember her if you've never seen TNA before, you might still remember her from like back in WWE NXT back in the 2010s. She was in there back then. And, Tessa Blanchard, she quit TNA Wrestling also to go on, move to CMLL Wrestling in Mexico. So she's down there now. And Victoria Crawford, her other cohort that was in her faction, I believe they were known as the Diamond Collective in TNA. Well, her other cohort, Mila Moore, she's now in Mustafa Ali's faction, Order 4, so I guess they better start calling it Order 5. So basically, not surprising that Victoria Crawford has been released from the company. She hadn't been on TNA television. She hadn't been on a match since, what was this? May 14th, 2026 on an episode of TNA Impact, honestly, I'm not going to miss this woman. I mean, she had been in WWE like from 2006 through 2023. She was never anybody that I cared for personally. And in TNA, she was kind of an annoying heel that was constantly interfering in matches. So I don't know. I never thought she was much of a wrestler, so I'm not going to miss her. Sorry. But anyway, she joined TNA in April of 2025. And let's see, what else can you say about her? Well, and as of right now, she's currently accepting bookings for independent matches, podcasts, seminars, and other appearances. Well, since I never cared for her, I don't think I'm going to be asking her to be making an appearance on this particular YouTube channel, but that's just me. Anyway, no offense if you're a fan of hers. I never really cared for her. Anyway, most recently, before this, we had seen two more wrestlers quit TNA on July 16th, 2026. Now, here we saw the tag team of Sinner and Saint, Travis Williams and Judas Icarus, formerly known as the Northern Armory, back when they were together as a faction with Eric Young. They're on the independent wrestling scene right now, probably working quite a bit in maybe Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling, up in where they're from in Canada. Now, also, probably it was big news here where, how WWE, they've been pursuing Mike Santana in TNA Wrestling for quite some time. With the partnership between WWE and TNA, we'd seen TNA wrestler Mike Santana on WWE NXT sometimes, and Mike Santana, his contract expired in mid-July of this year, and, WWE, they really were hoping to get Mike Santana they were hoping to hire him during summer of 2026, and they were hoping to get him on NXT, this summer, and maybe even to have him on the main roster by the end of 2026. Well, we saw on the July 21st episode of WWE NXT, Mike Santana was officially hired for WWE, and now his storyline that they put him in, they have Mike Santana. He's going to be pursuing the NXT Championship currently held by Tony D'Angelo. We saw on the most recent episode of NXT after they had the NXT Championship match. It was a no disqualification street fight where Tony D'Angelo fought Naraku. After that happened, we had Mike Santana coming out basically gesturing that he was going for the NXT Championship held by Tony D'Angelo next. So, not sure if maybe I could see WWE changing his name to something else, so we'll see if if they let him keep his original name, or I would figure they're probably going to give him a different name, so we'll see what happens with that. Now, also, people that were released from TNA so far this year, we had, the wrestler in TNA known as Jake something. We had, we've seen him. He's been officially hired by AEW Wrestling, and he's going by the name Jake Doyle. He's had some interesting matches, in AEW since he's been hired there. He's part of the, the faction known as the Don Callis family. And also from TNA, people that quit, in the company or they were hired elsewhere. We've seen the tag team, The Inspiration, Cassie Lee and Jesse McKay, formerly known as the Iconics, Peyton Royce and Billy Kay in WWE. They were released by TNA earlier this year, and now they're in AEW Wrestling. Now, I was kind of surprised by that because, their matches in TNA were they were terrible. So I'm like, why would Tony Khan want to hire them? I don't know. Maybe okay if you're just going to hire them maybe to be jobbers or something like that, to have them lose to the bigger stars, I guess. But, I was kind of surprised. A kind of a tag team like that kind of has all these crummy matches. Why would Tony Khan want them? Jeez. Their roster is already so bloated as it is, with a lot of people, they just can't get them on television all that much, and then they get a couple more wrestlers like them. Ugh. Anyway, so we've seen, The Inspiration on AEW, as well as, Tony Khan's sister promotion, Ring of Honor Wrestling. Anyway, then we also had in people that quit TNA Wrestling, whereas we had three of the four members of the Rascals. We had Zachary Wentz. Now, he was in WWE NXT many years ago, you may recall. And also Desmond Xavier, formerly known as Wes Lee in WWE. And also Myron Reed. They actually did hire, the AEW actually did hire the fourth member of the Rascals, Trevor Miguel. But they ended up firing him days later due to postings that they found out that he made that were not so good, that he posted online years ago. So they ended up firing him days later, and he went back to TNA. But we've seen Zachary Wentz, Desmond Xavier, and Byron Reed all, being hired by AEW. So that's where they're at right now. Also, we've seen fired by TNA Wrestling. We'd seen Sami Callihan. Even if you never watched TNA Wrestling, you might remember Sami Callihan when he was back on WWE NXT back in the 2010s, around 2014 and 2015, when he went by the name Solomon Crow. Well, Sami Callihan, he was fired. He had been working behind the scenes as of late, in TNA Wrestling. And TNA, they fired him due to cost cutting. You'd think, okay, with TNA, now that they're on AMC in prime time every Thursday, you'd think that TNA, they'd be expanding their business, not trying to, either fire people or, trying to cut costs, or a lot of people quitting because they're like, oh man, this company seems like it's a sinking ship, what the heck, So, anyway, Sami Callihan, they got rid of him as a behind-the-scenes worker, so that word has been through Fightful Select and through F4W Online that Sami Callihan is working behind the scenes in All Elite Wrestling right now. So glad to hear that he at least was able to get work so quickly, and they say he's working as a producer behind the scenes. He's not working under a contract, according to these other websites. They say, well, the AEWs, they're going to see how it goes for a while, and then, if they like how Sami Callihan's doing working behind the scenes, then they'll offer him a contract. So let's see. Also, we had, like I said before, Tessa Blanchard, her quitting TNA. Then we also had Myla Grace in TNA Wrestling. She quit the company, and she's now wrestling in the United Kingdom and Ireland on the indie circuit. And we had, this was a surprising one, Eric Young quitting TNA Wrestling. He's one of the founding people of TNA. He'd been with the company for so many years, probably a good 20 years or more. Now, Eric Young, even if you never saw TNA before, you may remember Eric Young working in WWE from 2016 through 2021. And he also came back for 2023, but I think in 2023 he was never actually on television at that particular point in time. And let's see. And Eric Young, well, he was back in TNA, but he ended up quitting. the company earlier this summer, and he still has a good relationship with, Triple H. So they say, Eric Young may very well be coming back to TNA. I mean, you might very well see him as somebody kind of in a similar role to what Shawn Spears does on NXT, where he wrestles on television as well as he coaches wrestlers behind the scenes. So that would be maybe a good role for Eric Young, because I figure he's got to be up there in years. His late, I think, 47 years old or something like that. So you figure he's not really going to want to wrestle full time, but you could definitely see him coaching behind the scenes, maybe doing some matches here and there on WWE television. Then we also have, that quit TNA Wrestling was Steve Maclin. Now, if you never saw TNA Wrestling, you may remember Maclin, formerly known as Steve Cutler in WWE. He was a member of the faction, the Forgotten Sons, along with Jax Riker and Wesley Blake. Well, I mean, Steve Maclin, he ended up quitting TNA because he's back on the indie scene right now, and he's looking into AEW from reports that I had read. And he said that he quit TNA because it's like, well, TNA was making it really difficult for him to get like indie bookings, and basically, it seems like most of these people in TNA right now, they're only paid on a per appearance deal, so he was like, well, and they haven't been having Steve Maclin on television all that much recently, so it's like, and if they're making it really difficult for him to get indie bookings, no wonder he quit, because he's not getting on television very much. So then we have TNA firing wrestling legend Tommy Dreamer, who had been working for TNA behind the scenes for 10 years. He had been the head of the TNA Creative and the head of TNA Relations, so he was probably responsible for a lot of these crummy scripts that we've been seeing as of late, and maybe that's probably why TNA wanted to give him the axe. They're like, yeah, well, there's been so many complaints, people don't find TNA Wrestling all that entertaining, and he's getting the blame as he's head of creative, so they're like, well, we got to cut costs, and maybe Tommy Dreamer, they were paying him a lot more than what TNA really wanted to pay him, so they ended up giving him the axe, and from what I've read, it seems like now Hunter Delirious Johnson is the head of the TNA creative department, and you may have heard of him from before, because he went by the name, the wrestler Delirious, in Ring of Honor Wrestling in the past, but they got Hunter Delirious Johnson in there now, taking over Tommy Dreamer for his responsibilities. And, we also have people that quit TNA Wrestling this year. We had the married couple of Mance Warner and Steph DeLander. Mance Warner, we've seen him being hired by Tony Khan. He's been showing up on Ring of Honor television, and also his wife, Steph DeLander, formerly known in WWE under the name Persia Pirotta when she was in WWE NXT. Steph DeLander, she's been keeping busy making indie appearances. So along with those are the 17 wrestlers from previously this year, along with Victoria Crawford, who makes wrestler number 18. So there you have it. Now, there has been reports that a couple of wrestlers that were formerly of WWE. Now, they signed another contract with TNA Wrestling as of late. So here's two wrestlers formerly of WWE that will not, I don't think you'll be hearing about them quitting TNA Wrestling in the near future, because Daria Ray, formerly known as Sonya Deville in WWE, she's been doing that heel, a general manager assistant. She's been... She had a 6-month contract when she first started with TNA Wrestling, when TNA Impact first started coming on AMC, and that 6-month contract expired, and she signed another contract with TNA. Also, former WWE wrestler Rich Swann, that you may remember from the 2010s, he was one of those cruiserweight wrestlers who appeared a lot on WWE 205 Live, on that weekly show that they used to have. Rich Swann, he signed another contract, and he's pretty good. So, I mean, I'm glad to hear he's at least staying with TNA Wrestling. Also, some more TNA news that you may want. I don't know if you haven't noticed, you might want to check this out. Now, the cable channel Vice, you may have heard they did that 3-hour documentary, Dark Side of the Ring, Jeff Jarrett and the Battle for TNA, parts 1, 2, and 3. If you haven't seen that, you might want to check that out on the cable channel Vice's YouTube channel. You can see that at no charge. They give a commercial, we could say a commercial-free version of the parts 1, 2, and 3 in their entirety. But then again, if you don't have YouTube Premium, then of course YouTube will force you to see the commercial stuff. But it's good to see that parts 1, 2, and 3 are available in their entirety through Vice's cable channel there. So that's just some TNA news for you. And anyway, thanks for joining me, and hope to see you again on the next video. Take care.